Hi, I'm Dave Hilgendorf, and welcome to video number 12 of a 14 video series based on the book Jesus is at Work, Having Joy and Purpose at Your Current Job. We're in the fourth and final part of this series, which is called Act Like Jesus, where we apply what we've been discussing in the earlier portion of this series and become doers and not just hearers of the word. Rather than doing what we have to do, we're talking about doing what we want to do, accepting the divine work assignments that God has given to each and every one of us. In the last video, we talked about being great in what we do. In this video, we're talking about modeling integrity. In my book, I tell a true story about when I smelled gas while working one day as a facilities engineer at a small research facility. After calling the gas company, the representative tried and failed to locate the source of the leak. According to his company's policy, he had to shut off the service to our entire facility unless I, as a representative for our facility, signed a form which said that we had found the source of the leak. The man brushed it off as no big deal, saying it was something that was done every day. But to me, signing that form was not an option, because by doing so I would be lying. Because I would not sign the form, those of us on site began digging around the gas piping where we smelled the leak. And within about a half an hour, we found the valve where the leak was occurring, and we were able to fix it without any disruption to the gas service or our facility production that day. I later got word that I had disappointed several people higher up in the organization that day by my willingness to stop production at our facility by not signing that form. That didn't bother me too much, though, because I know that God always honors our decision to honor Him and do the right thing. One definition of integrity is being honest and fair and being incorruptible. To me, integrity is about doing the right thing as God defines right through His Word, and it shows itself through several behaviors in the workplace. The first is being honest all the time, even when it's not convenient. There was a happy end to my story because we didn't suffer any financial harm from my unwillingness to lie by signing that form. But modeling integrity means being honest even when you know there's a very real chance you will pay a price. Other examples of being honest include admitting when you've made a mistake and telling the whole truth to someone, even if you think it will weaken your position. Withholding information or lying by omission is still lying. Another behavior of modeling integrity is to not play favorites. Hopefully, wherever you work, they have and communicate a policy that prohibits employees from showing preferential treatment. And whether you do or not, as Christians, we can look to God's Word for guidance on this. Deuteronomy 16:19 says, "You shall not pervert justice, you shall not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous." The Pharisees recognized the integrity of Jesus when they sent their disciples to Him. "Teacher," they said in Matthew 22:16 from the NLT, "we know how honest you are. You teach the way of God truthfully, you are impartial, and don't play favorites." Paul reminds us in his letter to the Ephesians that God is impartial. In Ephesians 6 verse 9, New King James, it says, "And you masters do the same things to them, giving up threatening, knowing that your own master also is in heaven, and there is no partiality with him." As an engineer, I've dealt a lot with salespeople who offer me gifts or want to take me to lunch or other entertainment events. I've tried to hold myself to an even higher standard than what my employer's policy is, and I've found that one benefit is that salespeople tend to stop offering when you keep saying no, thus reducing or eliminating the temptation. I was particularly tempted on one occasion when a salesperson told me about a mission trip he had gone on with his wife, and I shared about a mission trip my oldest daughter was planning on going on to Africa and her fundraising efforts. He offered to dedicate the sales proceeds from one night at his wife's clothing store to my daughter's trip. My first thought was, hey, that sounds great. After thinking about it further, though, I realized that just because he was a Christian offering to help a Christian cause shouldn't change the standard that I was trying to hold to when it came to favoritism and partiality at work. Another behavior that models integrity is to avoid gossip. 2 Timothy 2:16 NLT says, avoid worthless, foolish talk that only leads to more godless behavior. And Exodus 20:16 New King James says, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. When I left the corporate workplace to flip houses and run my own business for 8 years, and then returned as an employee, I was surprised how much gossip there was in the workplace. Gossip can be extremely damaging to individuals as well as to the organization as a whole. I've heard Dave Ramsey, a nationally known radio show host and teacher, talk about how gossip is cause for immediate termination at his company. Fortunately for his employees, Dave recognizes what a destructive practice that gossip can be. And whether or not you have that kind of commitment from the leaders of your organization, you can hold a high standard for yourself. Another high integrity behavior is to avoid using foul language or telling off-color jokes. Ephesians 5 verse 4 in the NLT says, obscene stories, foolish talk, and coarse jokes, these are not for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. Maybe you haven't had to deal with this, but I've worked in several locations where I had to listen to obscenities, including from my own boss. Now, whether it comes to gossip or bad language, here are 3 ways that you can deal with the situation, and each one takes a bit more courage. The first is just refuse to join in. If someone gossips or swears, you can change the subject or refuse to laugh. Second, you can protest by walking away immediately from the conversation. And the third way to deal with gossip or bad language is the most difficult, but most likely to actually affect a change in the other person's behavior, and that is to actually confront the situation directly with the offender. Another high integrity behavior is to avoid losing your temper. Proverbs 14:21 in the NLT says, people with understanding control their anger. A hot temper shows great foolishness. And James 1:19 New King James says, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Now, like most high integrity behaviors, this is one that you think might not be noticed by coworkers, but I found that over time others will notice if you are even-keeled and never lose your temper, and they'll appreciate it. Another high integrity behavior is to not envy. Proverbs 14:30 says, a sound heart is life to the body, but envy is rottenness to the bones. I have to admit I've struggled with this issue. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but in the past I would often compare myself to others at work, including their title, how well they do their work, how much money they make, rather than just being content with my job. And it's part of what led me to quit my job as an engineer, which ultimately led to a whole lot of pain for me. The last high integrity behavior I want to mention is to not be judgmental. Matthew 7:1 says, judge not that you be not judged. While envy is wanting to be like others, being judgmental is thinking you're better than others. In either case, you're focusing on yourself, and it's much better to focus on others in a positive way by loving and serving them, which, by the way, is what we're going to talk about in the next video. See you then.